When I look at my friends, family, and people I know who suffer either from financial, unemployment, or health crisis, I can't help but wonder, has Jesus abandoned us? To examine this repeated feeling that persists within me, I can't help but look into it spiritually deeper. Hope, I feel, doesn't come naturally to all of us. We sin repeatedly, and that causes us to feel guilt and prevents us from even having hope in any salvation or redemption whatsoever, which is an inaccurate thought. To better understand hope biblically, we need to look at the prophet of hope, a man named Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a real figure of history. Around the year 627 BC, when Jeremiah would have been about a junior in high school, God came up to him and said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." That's from Jeremiah 1:4. Now fast forward about 40 years, Jeremiah is still a spiritual leader for his community, but the nation is in crisis. The year is 587 BC, and the king of Babylon and his troops have surrounded the capital city of Jerusalem, setting up a deadly siege, leaving the people inside Jerusalem on the brink of starvation. Zedekiah, the king of Israel, still thinks he can beat the Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar, so he keeps fighting back. Meanwhile, Jeremiah tells the king, "It's over for you, Zedekiah. Give up and give in. The king of Babylon will come to the city and you will have surrendered, so you can trust God and do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way." By the way, Zedekiah will choose to do it the hard way. See 2 Kings 25:5-7. The rest of the spiritual leaders and prophets were assuring the king that Jeremiah was a fraud and downright cray-cray. They kept telling the king exactly what he wanted to hear. "You the man, King Zedekiah. Nobody can mess with you and your nation. We always win because God is always on our side." On the other hand, Jeremiah kept warning the king that these false prophets were merely offering cheap and false hope. "They dress the wounds of my people as though they were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace." That's from Jeremiah 6:14. Jeremiah's basic message was this: look deeper, king, because this isn't a military thing, it is a spiritual thing. In other words, the people of God have rejected the covenant of God. They've been committing spiritual adultery for far too long. King Zedekiah didn't like what he was hearing, as many power-hungry dudes do. So he branded Jeremiah an unpatriotic menace to national security, arrested him, and then threw him in jail. In the midst of these grim historical circumstances, as Jeremiah sits in a squalid prison cell, misunderstood, persecuted, hunted down, labeled, and derided, he goes on to proclaim some of the most powerful words of hope found in the entire Old Testament. Chapters 30-33 are often called the books of consolation or just the book of hope. Notice that hope, according to the Bible, is a vision for better days. The days are coming, declares the Lord in Jeremiah 33:14. All throughout the Older Testament, there are hints and pictures and clues that say the same thing. Better days are coming. The clues and pictures are so powerful that they should take our breath away. The vision for a better future isn't based on our wishful thinking or even on how much faith we invest in our future. Instead, the promises point to a specific person. Hope is not wrapped up in a season or a program or in a new job or a better relationship or a bigger house in a lavish neighborhood. Hope is wrapped up in a person. In the Bible, this person is Messiah. The person is called the righteous branch, who will sprout from David's line. What does that mean? First of all, throughout the Old Testament, the greatest king was King David. He was a flawed and imperfect man, but he was also a warrior for justice and truth and a man after God's own heart. Towards the end of David's life and throughout the rest of the Old Testament story, God kept promising, I will raise up a king like David, but much better than David. He will rule over my people. He will bless the whole earth. In Jeremiah 33:16, Jesus is called Lord our righteousness. In the Bible, righteousness is a relational term. In other words, a righteous person is someone who lives totally right with God and with others. Unfortunately, the Bible also says that none of us are righteous. Perhaps we get it right part of the time, but that doesn't help us. You're either righteous or you're not. None of us get it right. But this branch, this promised one, this Messiah will be called the Lord our righteousness. In other words, he will get it right all the time. He will be the only fully righteous human being who has ever lived. This leads into the heart of what we call the gospel. The New Testament declares that when Jesus, the Lord our righteousness, died on the cross, he took upon himself our righteousness. And in a marvelous exchange, he received his righteousness. You can read that from 2 Corinthians 5:20 to 21. That is simply astounding good news of freedom for all of us this Easter season. That's all we have for you today on Take 5. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that bell icon for weekly notification. Before Boopy calls out on today's episode, let us then reflect on 2 questions. Is our hope centered around Jesus or something else? As we grow into our Christian faith, has our hope expanded or diminished? After reading extensively on this, I've come to understand that even though life opens up a can of worms, we always have that hope in Jesus that's left, and he's got our backs. We got to remember that, you guys, each time. Whoopi, you can now call it.
Good.